You're welcome back from the break. You're still watching NBC, your number one African TV station on 43.2. Remember, this program comes to you every Saturday at 8:30 p.m. and then a repeat broadcast on Mondays at 10:30 a.m. And I have Godwin Agboka with me in the studios. Funjo Lamigoke will join us later on during the program. We're going over to Egypt, where the Egyptian Justice Minister has resigned.
Yeah.
And it said that the Judge Ahmed Mekki resigned from his post after protesters called for his dismissal. Concerns being cleansing the judiciary and a new judiciary law. I'm like, does it have to go that far? He couldn't be part of the whole process?
In terms of what?
In terms of, he's a judge staying, is it one, it's like the reasons they are given are not really solid or concrete enough for his dismissal, but he bowed to the pressures and just resigned.
Yeah, I mean, he's, again, good evening, viewers. He's a justice minister. So someone who has been appointed by the government to take charge of its judicial or justice-related issues. So for him, remember, the reason why he came under so much pressure was because he's a pro-reformist. Basically, he's a reformer. He's someone who is interested in reforms. So even before he came to power, he had been accusing the government of judicial interference. So when he was brought into government, most people actually thought that he was going to expedite the process of judicial reforms. So even as a justice minister, he's still spoken against the system by trying to take on some of those problems that are happening within, the judicial system. So most people, or the people who were critics or his critics,
they were expecting more from
him, and then he wasn't doing those as fast as he should have done in their expectation, which is why they put pressure on him. So there were two forms of pressure coming from different quarters. There were people who were his opponents, obviously, who didn't want him in power. So they thought that he was someone who was always trying to, sort of usurp or upset the system. That's number one. And then he had some proponents as well, people who liked him, but who thought that he should use his position to be able to bring reforms. But then, because he wasn't doing that as fast as he should be based on what people expected, they put pressure on him, which is why he resigned. Now remember this, there's a raging tension in Egypt right now between the government and the judiciary. The reason why there's a tension, that tension is because government is trying to interfere in the affairs of the judiciary. So the judiciary also doesn't want that. So what is happening is that there was a time when the government actually brought a bill before the Administrative Court of Egypt. And when they brought that before, it had to do with electoral reforms. And what they did was that as soon as they got the document, they took it to the Supreme Court for further review. And what that did was that it delayed the process of elections or the electoral reforms. The reason why the judiciary or the administrative court did that was that they wanted to assert some level of authority or independence, which the government didn't want. So this single issue has brought some kind of tension between the government and the judiciary. So the reason why, of course, obviously the critics are up in arms against the justice minister is because of some of these things.
You're thinking that he's a hindrance to
some
the
of
process.
them.
Yeah.
For some of them. Now remember, as I said, there are two groups, opponents and proponents. The proponents think that, hey, use your position to bring about some reforms in the judicial system. And then the critics think that, hey, he's going to be a hindrance, so he should go. So eventually he actually bowed to some pressure.
But he's amazing though, like he bowed out really quietly and just moved out of the scene. And hopefully with him gone, I hope they will be able to get the kind of the change that they're asking for.
No, let me make this point though. I think that he had actually declared his intentions to resign already, because there's a bill before the country's parliament, and the bill is actually the bill that is before the parliament. The parliament is made up of the Islamic-led group. So they have more people in parliament than usual. So he thinks that whatever bill is in parliament at this point will be passed anyway. So he had already threatened that he was going to resign if the bill was passed. He didn't wait So he's someone who felt quite uncomfortable within the system. I think that he's the best person for the Egyptian judicial system. As a justice minister, he's a reformist, so he was obviously working on bringing some reforms. Now that he's gone, I think the government is going to have its way of kind of asserting some independence or authority over the judiciary, which is actually going to be very bad for the Egyptian system.
Right, thanks, Gordon. But remember, for some time now, there's been so much tension in Egypt.
Sure.
Do you think with him going and the government trying to bring in new bills will bring some more tension in that community?
I think so. I think so. The reason why I think so is that for the very reasons that I've given, the Egyptian government is actually trying to interfere in the affairs of the judiciary. That alone is a problem. And many people who are observers within the Egyptian system have actually resisted that kind of thing. Because the Egyptian government now controls every aspect of the society. The only agency or institution that it cannot control is the judiciary.
Right. And
so
now
if it succeeds,
they're trying to come in
great.
also.
So if it succeeds in doing that, it will create problems, and then Morsi is going to have a field day in Egypt, which is not good for the system.
Okay, so that's on Egypt, where the Egyptian Justice Minister Ahmed Mekki just resigned from protesters calling for his dismissal. Yeah. They are saying that they want cleansing of the judiciary and a new judiciary law. Now, remember, you can watch this program on NBCLiveTV.com and all the programs right here on NBC 43.2 and also on your Roku box, so you don't have to miss any of the programs. Now, we're going over to Liberia, Gordon, for some time now. Like a few countries has been in the limelight, depends on how you look at it. Yeah. Liberia has been one of them, and recently a U.S. human rights report of corruption and lack of transparency. The 2012 report states that there is no law or criminal penalties for those who do break the law, although there are penalties that do exist for economic sabotage, mismanagement, among others. Yeah. So my question is, what harm is this report going to do to the image of Liberia? And also, why are those penalties not being applied to those who are breaking the law?
Yeah. No, I think that's a very good question. Let me begin by actually being cynical here. Who put out the report? It's the U.S. You know, I think the U.S. has its own problems to deal with than to just, you know, come up with reports about other countries. For me, the U.S. has a practice where, you know, it always wants to be the principal or the headmaster of the world by looking at what happens in other countries. But I think that there are many problems within the US for them to actually go out there looking at specific issues. But let me go to the substantive issue, which is some of the issues that you raised. The problem in Liberia today is that in spite of the progress that they've made since it's the post-war Liberia, let me say that one of the major problems in Liberia now is that there is no law that deals with official corruption, which is basically if you're a government official in office and then you commit, you use your position,
you get away with it.
To commit some kind of corrupt practice, you get away with it. That is a challenge because according to the report and according to what usually happens, many government officials actually use their positions to abuse office. By siphoning funds, by engaging in some immoral acts and all that. So that obviously is a gap or a challenge that has to be addressed within the Liberian system. That is one issue. But then in Liberia, there is also what they call the Anti-Corruption Commission. What this body does is it's
do they do anything at all?
No, they've actually done something over the last 3 or 4 years. What they've done is that they actually brought some charges against some government officials, about 10 of those. And then 6 of them were prosecuted and only 1 was convicted.
Out of the 6?
Out of the 6. Initially it was 10 and then 6 of them were prosecuted. 1 was actually convicted for 6 years. Great. The problem though is that there was a time when they had a problem with a government official. And what they did was that they actually took the matter up to the justice minister at the time for prosecution. And what the justice minister did was that the justice minister actually threw away all the charges against this person. So the problem the commission faces is that although they do have issues of corruption against some government ministers, there's some interference at the level of government, because government knows that one of its people is going to be prosecuted. So what it does is that it tries to kind of sabotage the process, and that is why the commission has not been as effective as it wants. So the report is right, and I think the Liberian needs to come up with a system that addresses some of those things within the Liberian system. But let me be quite fair over here. I think that given the time Liberia has had post-war, they have made a lot of inroads as far as progress in these areas are concerned.
They've come a long way.
Definitely. Progress is concerned in these areas. They've come a long way, and I think that it would take them much longer to actually get the system working like it does in some areas. The reason I'm saying that is that before they had this electoral or this process going, the system was battered. The system was broken. So they're actually going through the process of rebuilding the Liberian system, which is why I think that it has taken a little bit it has been a slower process than it's supposed to be.
Now let's look at the harm that you think this report will do to Liberia. This was released in 2012. Bear in mind that Liberia has always been US baby.
Sure.
So now for daddy coming out to say that you've been bad and this that what is US trying to do? A lot of things that went on Liberia is going on in Liberia. We all knew there was America behind it.
Now I understand. I think that the US, I mean, of course, I started by being quite cynical, but there are times when as a country the US actually has the system going on already. Every year it comes out with a report that looks at some acts of corruption in some countries. So although Liberia has been under the
umbrella
of or the apron strings of the US, I think that it was a little bit kind of impartial here by putting out this report. Here's my concern. My concern is that reports of this nature usually actually bring problems that will affect investor confidence.
That's what I just wanted to talk to you about. Because if you're an investor, you want to hold back.
Sure. Yeah. You want to hold back because if a country or a system is broken, is corrupt, obviously you're concerned about your business, about your money, how you invest and all that. Because what happens usually when a system is corrupt is that kickbacks become the order of the day. Sort of corruption also becomes the order of the day, and there are so many things that do not work within the system. So part of the problem Liberia will face is that. Now, economically, Liberia is going through a rebuilding process. So they need the investment, foreign direct investment, to be able to develop. And then this report actually doesn't bode very well.
Right.
Now, one interesting thing that has happened though is that government officials have reacted very angrily
about the report,
actually denying aspects of the report. But some other organizations like the anti-corruption group actually has come out to say that, hey, this is what is happening in Liberia and something needs to be done about it. I think that it is true, and government needs to be able to come together, kind of come up with a concerted effort to be able to address these issues.
Right. Yeah. And briefly, we all know, we said that Liberia has come a long way, and there's still more to be done, like you said. And some of the government officials come out to condemn or to refute these reports. Investment is very important, and if you expect people to come over to your community to invest, these are some of the issues that need to be addressed.
Sure, definitely.
So Liberia, this one they have to deal with this one. And with the kickbacks, we also have a story from Angola to do with the country's prime minister or president. We'll come back to that. But before we go to that, we're going to take a short break, viewers. We'll be right back. The program is Africa Today, right here on MBC, your #1 African TV station on 43.2. Remember, it's every Saturday at 8:30 p.m. and a repeat broadcast on Mondays at 10:30 a.m. We'll be right back.